All right, we are less than 2 weeks away from the NHL trade deadline, and you have so many questions about what the Boston Bruins are going to do, and I am here to answer those today on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast.
Your Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be, as well as take a look around the NHL. Today is Wednesday, March 9th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. The podcast is free and available on all podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. So please log on to your favorite podcast app, go to YouTube, smash that subscribe button. Each new episode will be automatically added to your feed for you to download, listen, and enjoy and watch. And if you're on social media, you can follow along at ENC McLaren on Twitter and Instagram for my hockey tweets, dad jokes, lifelong Bruins fan. Been covering this team formally for various outlets for 17 years. And you can also follow at Locked NHL Bruins for all the latest on the black and gold. Last week on the Locked On Network, we were third in terms of the highest engagement per fan on social media and the highest percentage of follower increase. So thank you so much for following at Locked NHL Bruins. It really means a lot. And speaking of Locked NHL Bruins, I put a call on both the Twitter account and the Instagram account for some mailbag questions. And you all responded with a bunch of great ones that I am going to answer on today's podcast. The Bruins were off yesterday following that disappointing overtime loss to the Los Angeles Kings, where they gave up the tying goal in the last minute. Charlie Coyle with unfortunate turnover in overtime that led to the game-winning goal by Andreas Athanasiou. Some concern in recent days about their propensity to give up those goals in the final minute. Like I said on yesterday's podcast, I think it's just a bit of a blip. In the two last week, they took penalties, which certainly didn't help. And then against the Kings, just a matter of some bad puck luck. Let's get right to your questions because there's a bunch. And I want to start with at Jake Brewer, who asks, what do you want the Bruins to get at the deadline? And what do you think they'll try to get at the deadline? Well, I do believe that Don Sweeney is going to be active at the trade deadline. As a reminder, the deadline is set for March 21st, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That is a Monday afternoon. And between now and then, be all over the various trade rumors, reports, and actual news that comes out. I do want to give a bit of a caveat before we start. I did work for 5 years at The Score up here in Toronto, which is one of the most popular sports apps. And as a news editor, we had it, kind of ingrained into us that there are a handful of NHL insiders that you can trust to create a story around or a report around. And it's only a report until the teams confirm the news, or it remains a report in that instance. So say Elliot Friedman comes out and says the Bruins are believed to be sending Jake DeBrusk to Team X. You would frame that as report Bruins trading DeBrusk to whoever for whatever. And then once the teams confirm it, then it's an official news story. It's confirmed. Now, again, there's only a handful of insiders to whom those reports would be credited and written up. We got Elliot Friedman, Bob McKenzie back in the day, Darren Dreger, Chris Johnston, Pierre LeBrun, Frank Saravelli, perhaps, and I don't know. That's probably pretty much it. Now, there are some local people who are more plugged in, but at the same time, it's those big guns that you want to rely on. So just be wary of various reports, rumors that are coming out, and not investing too much in, someone saying this could happen and believing it's going to happen. Anyways, back to Jake's question. What do you want the Bruins to get at the deadline? What do you think they'll try to get at the deadline? I do think they're going to look for some help on defense. And I do think they will try to add some depth up front or some scoring up front, especially if Jake DeBrusk is on the way out. He has been filling in or playing on the top line with Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, playing very well, albeit on his off wing. I don't know if it's ideal to keep him up there full time heading into the playoffs. And of course, there's that trade request, so it's likely that he won't be around for the postseason unless they decide to keep him as an internal rental. In which case, do they roll with the current forward lines? That's possible, but I'm of the mind that you don't want Jake DeBrusk here for the playoffs. It's a guy who doesn't want to be a Boston Bruin. It's a potential distraction. He's incredibly streaky. If he goes cold in the playoffs, that's obviously a problem. And you just want guys who want to be members of the Boston Bruins. So at the end of the day, I think they'll try to get some help on defense, and I think they will try to add a scoring winger to play with Brad Marchand and Patrice Bergeron. Now, there was a report, again, going back to the reports, Pierre LeBrun, TSN of The Athletic, saying that Jacob Middleton of the San Jose Sharks is drawing sizable interest. Tampa Bay, Boston, and St. Louis are among the teams interested. Middleton is a big boy. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He has played 39 games for San Jose this season, 3 goals, 8 points, 62 penalty minutes. He did drop the gloves with Trent Frederick a couple months ago. Restricted free agent following the season, so the Bruins could potentially retain his services beyond this season's stretch of games. Now, Jacob Middleton, he was a 7th-round pick back in 2014. He came up through the OHL, primarily with the Ottawa 67s. Not really a offensive contributor, but again, he's a big body, kind of a shut down, more physical defenseman, and shouldn't come at that high of a cost. Averaging over 18 minutes of ice time for the Sharks. Not really a top 4 guy, but he could play in the bottom 6. Now, having said that, there's a lot of talk about the Bruins adding a physical, shutdown, left-hand guy. In my mind, they already did that in Derek Forbort. He's 6'4", 220 pounds. He's got 10 points this season in 53 games. Can hit, can drop the gloves. So seems a bit redundant to add at that position. And we'll talk a bit when we answer another question about who they might or what they might target as well. But thank you for that question. And before we get to some more, a quick word about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar on the market. And if you haven't tried their puffs, you're missing out. Puffs are the first ever protein infused marshmallow. They're fluffy, marshmallowy, obviously. Not just a protein bar, they're a treat. And they're covered in 100% real chocolate. Puffs are a fan favorite with some incredible flavors like cinnamon churro, coconut marshmallow, banana cream pie, all covered in 100% chocolate, but they're low calorie, high protein. You can replace your candy bars with these as a healthy snack alternative. They also give you an energy boost to get through your day. At Built Bar, they're all about the taste. They make their bars delicious first, then figure out how to make it healthy. I don't know how, but they pull it off every single time. Most Built Bars contain about 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 4 net carbs, 17 grams of protein. Go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 and get 15% off your order. That's promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at built.com. I want to thank you so much again for making Locked On Boston Bruins your first listen every day. The podcast is free and available on all podcast platforms as well as on YouTube. As your second listen, please check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NHL game with analysis from our local reporters, free and available wherever you get podcasts. All right, let's zip through some of these other questions. Nick Godin at Flying Oar asked, as we get closer to the trade deadline, what do you think is the biggest necessity for the Bruins? Acquiring a shutdown defenseman or acquiring another goal scorer or both? Again, to kind of piggyback off the last question, I do think they need to add a goal scorer. I don't know if they need a shutdown defenseman per se. I've been saying all along they should look at the right side of the blue line instead of the left side. You already have Grzelcyk, Riley, Forbort, Vakanainen. Looks like he is getting healthier and could be back soon. Jacob Chychrun has looked very, very good in limited time this season. On the right side, you have Charlie McAvoy, Brandon Carlo, and then the depth falls off pretty quick. Connor Clifton, Brady Lyle. You have some guys who on the left side who could play on the right side, but I do think they should look at, if you're not going to add like a top flight left-hand defenseman to push some of those guys down the depth chart, then you should look at the right side. And again, I do think they should acquire another goal scorer. You can never have too many scorers in the lineup. And even if Jake DeBrusk is not traded, I would still like to see that happen. I'm not convinced, because of how streaky he can be, that Jake DeBrusk is the answer on the top line, although he has been very good as of late. I would still like to see them pick up a second line center, but that might be something that they look at in the off season. Thomas Hertl's name is out there. He is reportedly still looking at potentially re-signing with the San Jose Sharks. Eric Haula has played very well in that role, but you could easily bump him to the third line to play with Coyle and Smith. I think that could be a pretty effective trio. Trent Frederick, Coyle, Smith, the Oceans line has been getting some production lately. Not necessarily the best defensive trio. So Howell, I think, could really stabilize that third line as well. Lauren Campbell, host of the Locked On Red Sox podcast, asks, Darren Dreger said the Bruins are among 8 teams seriously in the chase for Jacob Chychrun. Do you think he'd be a good fit for Boston? And what do you think a trade package looks like to acquire him? obviously, yes, I do think he would be very attractive pickup for the Boston Bruins for a number of reasons. Back when he was drafted in 2016, I was very high on Jacob Chychrun. I was hoping that the Bruins would pick him in that draft. I wasn't as familiar with Charlie McAvoy at the time as I was with Chychrun, being up here in Ontario, watching him play for Canada for the Sarnia Sting. The other thing that is really appealing is that his contract is incredibly team friendly. $4.6 million cap hit over the next 3 seasons through 2025. His defense may not be elite. He did score 18 goals, 41 points last season for the Coyotes, fallen off this season, but pair him with Charlie McAvoy, and that could be a very dynamic duo on the top pair for the Boston Bruins. What would it take to get him? Well, probably a lot. A first round pick, I would imagine. I'm sure they would ask for Fabian Lysell and or Mason Lohrei, perhaps Urho Vakanainen, Jack Studnicka, Jake DeBrusk. Those are all potential pieces. If the Bruins could trade, say, a first, Vakanainen, Studnicka, DeBrusk, and get Phil Kessel in that trade, I think that could be something that they look at. But Chychrun's going to be very expensive. There's a lot of interest in him. The Bruins are, like Lauren said, one of 8 teams interested, and it's going to take a lot to get him out of Arizona. I'm quite befuddled as to why they would do that in the first place. They still have to field the team for next year. So they'd be looking for some, guys who are close to NHL ready, if not already in the NHL, as well as prospect and probably some high draft picks. Speaking of Phil Kessel, Rick City asks, how great is Phil Kessel? To me, very great. Fun story last night. He's on an Ironman streak at the moment. The Coyotes, he came out for one shift against the Detroit Red Wings, and then the Coyotes put him on their jet, sent him home to attend the birth of his child, which is pretty cool. I am very high on Phil Kessel, bringing him back to the Boston Bruins. He was drafted by the Bruins back in the day, 5th overall, I believe, traded to the Maple Leafs. He went on to win a couple cups with the Pittsburgh Penguins. Not quite the speed, perhaps, but he's, again, Ironman streak, very reliable, shoots with great regularity. And I think it would be cool just to see him back in black and gold. Maybe he's not the best option out there at this point. Would he be a downgrade from Jake DeBrusk on the top line? He plays on the right side, at least. That's a bonus. But I just think it would be really cool to get him back with the Boston Bruins. Becky at BHabs37 asks, what teams would you want to face most and least in the playoffs? It's going to be tough for the Boston Bruins either way. Like I said yesterday, they're in line to play either the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, or the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round as either the wild card team or third in the Atlantic. So it's going to be an uphill battle either way. Carolina, Frederik Andersen in net. The Bruins have had success against him in the playoffs in the past. Tampa Bay, not as deep as they were when they won the Cup the last 2 seasons, having lost Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow. But they still have Andrei Vasilevsky, who's arguably the best goalie in the world. The Florida Panthers, amazing in the regular season. They have yet to get it done in the playoffs. Sergei Bobrovsky has played well this season, but he can always be a bit leaky. I mean, once you get in the playoffs, it's such a crapshoot. Anything can happen. There's no easy out among any of these teams. So, Godspeed once you get in there, and we'll see what happens. Before I get to some more questions, thank you so much again for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. Be sure to check out the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast, hosted by Steele Roden and Flip Livingstone, one of my old colleagues from the Score. They help you become experts of your fantasy league, free and available wherever you get podcasts. Dr. Bobby Gagnon at 58 Les Paul asks, decent chance 74 doesn't get traded. I think there is a chance he doesn't get traded. Again, he has been playing very well recently on the top line with Marchand, Bergeron. His best hockey of the season came on that road trip out west. But again, he is a very up and down player. And if he goes cold, then that's certainly a problem. Right now, he's on pace for 22 goals, 14 assists, for 36 points on the season, which, not awesome production for a guy who has top 6 aspirations. The big hindrance in trading Jake DeBrusk is his qualifying offer, which I believe is around $4.4 million. So a team acquiring him, that's a stumbling block. You don't want to pay $4.4 million for a guy who's only going to get 36 points, to be honest. So we do know that his agent has been given permission to speak to other teams about a contract extension. If they can agree to something at a lesser number for next season, that will make it easier to trade him. But again, the team that his agent's talking to, they have to have something that the Bruins want in return. So I think there's a chance he doesn't get traded. For me, heading into the playoffs, you want guys who want to be Boston Bruins, who are going to give it their all. Not that DeBrusk won't bring that effort in order to sabotage anything per se, but you want guys who want to be here. All the guys who signed in the offseason want to be here, want to be contributing members. DeBrusk, not that he has one foot out the door, but he just doesn't want to be a Boston Bruin. And I want guys in the playoffs who want to be members of the Black and Gold. Joshua Earl at Joshua Earl 6 asks, I think Sweeney makes 2 trades this deadline. If you had to choose, what do you think they look like? Great question. I don't know. I think, like I said, with the Coyotes, you could perhaps make 1 trade and get what you need in Chychrun and Kessel. I wouldn't mind them getting a second line center, like I said, Dylan Strome. If he's available from Chicago, I still think they could target him. Strome with Pastrnak and Hall could be a very good trio. Put Hala with Coyle and Smith, and then you have the fourth line of Foligno, Nosek, and Lazar. I really do think they should look at adding some depth on the right side of the blue line as well. In my mind, they're pretty well covered on the left side in terms of depth. I'd like to see them add something on the right side. Now, could they go for more of an offensive-minded guy? As Garrett asks, Garrett LC at MA Sad Boy asks, if the Bruins are going to pursue a defenseman at the deadline, would you prefer a puck-moving guy in the vein of John Klingberg or a stay-at-home physical guy in the vein of Josh Manson? For me, I would like to see them add a puck-moving guy, kind of like a Connor Clifton. He's capable of moving the puck. He can be physical, just doesn't do it consistently. I think John Klingberg would be a great target. Damon Severson from the New Jersey Devils, as Scott McLaughlin of WEEI added in my mentions the other day. He would be a very attractive target. He's got 1 year left on his deal. PK Subban could be that guy, although I know a lot of Bruins fans would be reluctant to bring him in just because of the history there. But I think, he's an unrestricted free agent. He will not be re-signed by the Devils. Motivated to win a cup, to get something decent on his next deal. And I think he could be both that physical presence as well as a puck-moving guy. Ideally, you get you someone who can do both, as they say. Again, I think you already signed that kind of shutdown, quote-unquote, guy in Derek Forbort. Unless someone on the left side is moving out, I think they're okay there. Someone on the right side, I think, would be better. Got a few questions on Instagram as well here to wrap things up. At unicorn_Betty already kind of talked about DeBrusk. Risky trades. I'm not sure if I will say this. Don Sweeney has a propensity in recent years to avoid rental situations. Charlie Coyle, Nick Ritchie, Andre Kasha. These were all guys who were brought in with term. Marcus Johansson, I guess, was an unrestricted free agent who they were not able to sign. But it really seems as though Sweeney is interested in bringing guys in who can remain with the club longer than a couple months. Reluctant to give up high-end assets for rentals, in other words. So unless it's Thomas Hertl or, a really high-end player, like I don't know if they would do that for Claude Giroux per se. You want to know that. Look back to 2018. They went after Rick Nash. He played well for the Bruins, but there's that concussion history. He wasn't able to finish things out. So they might be reluctant to do something like that once again. In other words, they want like a sure thing or someone who they can keep in the mix beyond this season. If they can get some assurance from Hertl that he would sign with them, then yeah, they would go all out for him, I would think. Two quick ones to wrap up. Who's contender for next captain after Patrice Bergeron? For me, it's, could be Brad Marchand in the immediate future, but I think Charlie McAvoy is the next long-term captain of the Boston Bruins for sure. And finally, Unicorn Betty asks, will the Bruins continue with Ullmark and Swayman next season? I believe that's the plan. Ullmark signed for 4 years, $20 million, so he's around for 3 more seasons. I think next year with Jeremy Swayman still on his entry-level deal, they'll have this tandem together for under $6 million, which is exceptional. Things might change when Swayman becomes a restricted free agent in 2023. And if he continues along this track, he'll be due for a very big increase in pay. So do they look to move on from Ullmark at that point? Who knows? But I think this will be the tandem for the balance of this season and at least for next. Thank you so much for sending in all these questions. It's been a while since had this many to answer, and I really do appreciate it. I know a lot of you are interested in what the Bruins are going to do leading up to the trade deadline, as am I. Really so many options up in the air for the Boston Bruins. A few key areas of improvement that could be targeted. Again, scoring winger, depth on defense, an impact defenseman would be great to move guys down. A right-handed shot, I think, in both situations would be preferable. And second-line center, perhaps even first-line center, needs to be addressed with the departure of David Krejci and with Patrice Bergeron, an unrestricted free agent this summer, but we don't need to talk about that yet. Anyways, that's it for today's episode. A bit of a longer one, but so many questions to get through, and I feel like I sped through them. Hopefully I gave adequate answers there. And we'll be back tomorrow to tee up a game against the Chicago Blackhawks. Bring you all the latest on the black and gold here on the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day. Take care, friends.